Good afternoon, everybody. This is Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest. Today, we're announcing the release of the Tower 3.0 guide. This video will specifically be covering floors 40 through 50EX of the upcoming Porcelain Tower. However, if you are a newer player and you haven't done floors 1 through 40, or you have questions about them on kind of optimal strategies or how to go about it easier, you can always use the PDF because we do have all 50 floors inside of it ready for you to take a look at. Let's go ahead and dig in. Before we get into the specific floors, I do want to do a couple special thank yous. Shout out to Bismarck from WoTV, of course, as always. What a lot of people don't realize is that Bismarck actually recently released a quest feature, which has been implemented into this guide. His quest feature does let you sort via tower. It does show the enemies in the tower, the resistances, the information that the game actually does not show you. It also shows you a layout of the map and positions, and a lot of that information has been updated for all of the floors in this guide. So a special thank you to Bismarck. Special thank you to Gutsy as well for his access to the status resistant and VC spreadsheet that he uses. Ultima, of course, for some translated strategies, tips, and images. For floors 30 through 40, special thanks to YouTubers Gilgamesh and Autistic Knight for letting me use images from their YouTube videos. Special thanks to Umbra for letting me use his videos or use images from his videos and sometimes some strategies from his videos from his archived footage in the building of this guide. And finally, a special shout out this time for Guide 3.0 to Stone Mont and Hamigemu. If you guys aren't familiar with them, they are YouTube content creators on the JP side. They do have guides for floor 41 through 50EX, which I will link down in the description below if you want some additional resources besides this guide. If you do want to access the Tower 3.0 guide, it will be down in the description as both a PDF and a IMGR. We will also be linking to the previous videos. Let's go ahead, head to floor 40, and let's go ahead and give it a start here. That's floor 38. That is not floor 40. That is floor 40EX. Let's go ahead and start with floor 41, though. Floor 41 is going to be an ice element floor, and it is going to harken back to level 75. The enemies are going to be Lamia and skeletons, and you can see here on the map layout that you're kind of going to be in the center, and you're going to be flanked on one side by skeletons and on one side by Lamia and skeletons. Now, of course, when you're thinking about Lamia, the most important thing is always going to be charm and confusion resistance. You're definitely going to want to think of Silma, who recently came out as an Amar unit that has both of those things, which makes her exceptionally powerful on this floor. Another interesting thing about this floor, which you will actually see patterns of as we transition through the different floors, is that enemies are going to have AoE resist and single hit resist a little bit more commonly. And you're also going to notice that a lot of the enemies have high defense penetration, and they are going to have very high accuracy. So previously, if you were using like a high defense tank build, if you were using or relying on that, or if you were relying on evasion builds, you're going to find that they are not as capable anymore of kind of getting the job done. Another shout out for this floor as well. We do have a lot of relevant units with charm immunity. Gilgamesh at his 120 does also have a charm resistance ability, which he can throw onto your allies as well. So if you have a unit with confusion resistance, you can have Gilgamesh throw charm resistance on them, and they're going to be safe from the Lamia. Now, the enemies on this floor do have AoE resistance plus 30. They are going to be weak to single hit resistance by 10. They're going to be weak to fire and, of course, fist resistance. And the skeletons will also inflict blind and disable and immobilize, which is never fun. So you're going to want to run a combination of status ailment resistances. If you have Raldor, really good idea to bring him. Otherwise, you're going to want to bring King Elda. You're going to want to bring Luartha. Pretty much bring any of your fire units that you can bring The resistances are not going to be crazy high on this floor, so you can probably get by with any type of combination of either fist or fire units. Just make sure you have that confusion resistance on, make sure you have some charm resistance, and you should be fine. Shout out as well, you can use the Chocobo VC for some charm resistance, and Golem as an Esper also has confusion resistance as well. Taking a look at floor 42. Floor 42 is going to be a light element floor, which means you are going to want to bring dark element units. Now, whenever you're kind of in a situation where you're up against, you know, fist enemies or lance enemies, some important things to consider would be Doom immunity. The enemies on this floor do use Doom, so make sure you consider that when you are building your combinations. You can kind of go two routes on this floor. You could go light elemental route, or you could go dark elemental route. I think the dark elemental route is going to be the easiest. And you're also going to bring a combination, or need to bring a combination of magic and slash, because the spear enemies are going to resist slash, and the fist enemies are going to resist magic. So you have to use the magic on the spear enemies and the slash on the fist enemies. The enemies do have 50% resistances to all elements except dark. The bandits, which are going to be the fist-based bandits, they are going to be the ones who use Doom. The ninja ability Anton, just as an important note here, will be really effective because that's going to bypass anything that has either, you know, weapon resistance or such, because it's just straight typeless elemental damage. So if you have a ninja with Anton, you could definitely use them. Garvel is definitely going to excel on this map. So will actually Whisper and Little Leela. Of course, they also have access to the passive Providence of Light, which will give them some powerful light resistance as well. The enemies, also being that they are spear and fist based, does mean that you are going to want to bring area resistance, since almost all spear attacks are considered area attacks as well. And when you are going through your initial deployment and you are looking at where to position your enemies or your allies, players 4, 5, 6 will be engaging the monks first. Players 1, 2, 3 will be engaging the lancers first. Other than that, really, I would just plan on having good VCs and good TMRs. Of course, I'm thinking of bringing, for example, the light elemental ring from the earlier tower floors, which everyone should have. Thancred's TMR could be really valuable here. Phoebe's TMR is going to be really valuable here. Remember that anything that gives light resistance or weapon resistance is going to be much more powerful than defense, because a lot of the enemies now have that defense piercing, which means your defense is just going to be quite easily shredded on the tower floors. Floor 43 is going to be kind of the first fire floor. I wouldn't categorize this floor as exceptionally difficult. I would categorize it as annoying. And I think the one thing about this floor that's interesting is I think a lot of players will find this easy, because we have Krace, who was both a free unit that was given to us. You'll have the water ring by now. Most players have access to Siren, right? Most players have Ildira and Tidus for free. So you're going to have a lot of really free accessible water units for this map. And most of the enemies are weak to missile, weak to slash, which is going to make Tidus and Krace just shine immensely. Now, most of the enemies are going to be Paladin and Red Mage, and that's not too much of a problem. You do have to consider, since there is variable heights on this map, that jamming thrust is going to be used by the enemies quite a bit. Of course, being that range height is an important factor, Ildira and Krace will pretty much just destroy the opponents. The Paladins do have Immobilize plus 25, and this is also something we're going to notice as we go through the floors 40 through 50 on tower right now, is a lot of the enemies are going to have either passive status ailments associated with their attacks, or they're going to start doing these kind of, you know, like ninjas with poison, but they have plus 25% chance to land poison, etc., etc. You are going to have two red mages on both sides. A barrier break from Winter Victoria or Krace is going to be really important since we are dealing with paladin-based enemies. Sleep resistance as well. The red mages will be spamming sleep If you have Titus with Vow of Love, this was a strategy that was posted quite all over the place on Ultima. Since Titus has resistance to sleep, if you have Vow of Love on him, the enemy red mages will just cast sleep on him and he will resist it. The Siren VC, of course, gives plus 25 resist to water units, which makes them even more powerful against the fire units. And Glaciella, Titus, and Christmas Victoria will basically dominate the stage together. Christmas Victoria does also have sleep resistance, so the combination of Titus and Christmas Victoria are just going to be pretty powerful. We do also have Tyrell, who does have sleep resistance, which could be really nice, and Glaciella as well. If you are going to bring Glaciella, make sure that you sub her appropriately so that she has access to her. I think she has like 1 or 2 slash attacks she has access to. So just make sure she has the appropriate sub job and you are utilizing her for her slash attacks, not for her pierce attacks, because the enemies will resist those. Taking a look at floor 44, this is going to now be the water floor, and this is where we're actually going to notice some very interesting tower mechanics. And this is the only stage that has this mechanic, so it's very important that you pay attention. But all of the enemies have water resistance penetration plus 70, and they also have defense penetration plus 50. So what this means is defense and water resistance are essentially either halved or 70% weakened, right? So the best way to survive on this floor is to straight up go for missile resistance. That is, you know, missile resistance, single hit resistance. That's going to be the only way to go if you want your units to be able to survive on this floor. One of the other things that's really important on this floor is that the enemies are susceptible to calculator disable. So one of the big strategies, particularly you can see here on Stone Mods Clear, is that he actually uses Marial, and you can't see her, but Livial is down here as well. And using calculator disable, you can see he actually has like 5 units disabled, and Severo is stunned right now. You could also utilize Frederica for her disabling shot. So this floor is going to heavily depend on how you utilize your units in terms of status ailments. It could be really easy if you are able to land disable and you're just stacking missile resistance, or it could turn out to be an exceptionally difficult stage for you, depending on the route that you choose to go. Now, all the enemies do have 40% elemental resistance except for lightning. The enemies also have 50% resistance to all weapon types except for missile and pierce. Target Severo first. You can sleep him, and then of course disable here. Frederica's Dream I would also 100% recommend here, particularly if you're bringing lightning units, because it also gives missile resistance to lightning units in your composition as well. So Frederica's Dream, if you're running a lightning comp, is just going to be exceptionally powerful on this floor. Floor 45. So floor 45 is interesting as well. You're going to see a variety of status ailments here. You're also going to see some interesting weaknesses from the enemies. Basically, you're going to have cactars, which are lightning element, dragons, which are earth element, skeletons, which are water element, and skeletons, which are earth element. What's interesting here is all enemies are weak to their normal attack type, right? So water is going to be weak to lightning, lightning is going to be weak to earth, earth is going to be weak to wind. However, all of the enemies are going to be weak to earth as well, including the earth enemies, which is really interesting. So the enemies have 0 slash resist, 10 fist resist, and then they kind of resist everything else. They also have AoE resistance, plus 40, single hit resistance, minus 15. So you want to bring slash, you want to bring fist, you want to bring earth, or you want to bring the counter to the element that you're going to be fighting against. I would definitely not bring lightning, even though the cursed bones are water. Probably the most dangerous cursed bones are water, just because you're going to get so much damage bonuses from the dragons and the red skeletons against you that it'll probably count against you. So slash units, earth, single hits for that exploiting of the single hit resist minus 15, and you're going to be golden. Interesting thing on this floor as well, the enemies do have Spirit 40 defense plus 20, and they have Spirit and defense penetration plus 60. The water skeletons will disable and immobilize. That makes them the scariest kind of first and foremost that should be targeted. The mini dragon can be charmed, and the north team will kind of want to come south, right? Because you can see here in this picture that they do have kind of the two teams separated, right? Like this is one team here, and then you have one team up here. And the team that's right here is going to have 3, and this team's going to have 2, right? So no matter what, 2 of your units are going to be separated on this map. So make sure you have a healer in both groups. That would be a healer in P5, P6, and a healer in P1, P2, P3. I definitely think a turtle strategy is going to be pretty effective on this floor. You can charm the mini dragons, which would be a good idea. I would also consider using Frederica's TMR for disable resistance and bind resistance. You could also use Tetrasilphid for disable resistance. You could use Bahamut for bind resistance. And the Cactars are going to be paralyzing as well. So you're going to want to like throw on some jeweled rings on your characters. You want to throw Behemoth on one of your units for that paralysis resistance. It's just going to be a combination of having the right gear, having the right espers, and being able to kind of turtle and kill the enemy slowly and efficiently. Floor 46 is going to be the wind floor, and this floor is going to be your worst nightmare. Is kind of the best way to describe it. You're going to want to bring Ice and Slash. That's just, you know, that's what you're going to want to bring. Basically, this floor has Mia, Uldoa, a bunch of ninjas, and a bunch of Gill Snappers. Now, the problem with this floor is the enemy ninjas have evasion plus 100. The enemy ninjas also have poison plus 25. So what that means is when they land or attack you with a poison ability, that ability is going to have a 75% chance to land on you, which means even if your units have 50% poison resistance, there is still a chance that poison is going to land. Now, the poison is enhanced compared to most poisons in the game, and it's going to deal about 1,500 to 2,000 damage to each character per tick. The best way to avoid this is to use Calamity Guard, which have Mashery, Agrius, Cadia, and Livial. Oh my god, I can't believe I remember every unit's name. They have access to. You can also use Oron. This floor is basically designed for Oron because he does have a party-wide quote-unquote poison nullify. And then you can also use Rain for his single target poison nullify. If you're in a situation where you are going to have to fight and remove poison, 4 units in the game have access to Esunaga. That's going to be Mashery, Cadia, Serge, and Mia. I know a lot of people have Mia leveled, so this might be a good place to throw Mia in and just have her cast Esunaga, since you'll probably be using her in a more offensive or Steel Heart capacity later in tower. You can also utilize some jobs that have access to Monk main job and Monk sub job to use Purify. Now, not all Monk sub jobs and all Monk main jobs have access to Purify, so make sure you check the list down below. You have Meriluke, Cecil, Ziza, Gafgirion, and you have Glaciella. Now, the ninjas are also weak to magic, so you could utilize Holy on them, for example. However, they are going to maybe be a little bit more resistant since it's not an ice attack. Just be aware of that. I would stack accuracy. If you're going to bring Gilgamesh, put like Excalibur or something on, take your Frostbite off, and just go accuracy really hard. The enemy Mia does have Snipe Dagger, so you do have to be aware of confusion. The enemy Uldoa does have paralysis as well, so keep that in mind. And of course, all enemies, as is the continued trend here, do have defense penetration plus 50, so keep that in mind as well. I also forgot to mention Rosa does also have a poison nullification, so you can bring Rosa in here in order to prevent the poison that's going to be hitting you. Let's talk about floor 47. Floor 47 is going to be an earth floor, and this is the floor that you want to utilize Charm on. This floor reminds me of the EX floor of the Final Fantasy Tactics event where you went into the deep dungeon, where it could either be extremely difficult or you could run forward, charm a thief, and then the enemy thief will charm other units on the enemy's team. And then the next thing you know, you have 3 enemies charmed, very similar to this picture right here. So definitely this is like a floor for Mia. This would actually be a floor for Zazan if you have Zazan leveled up, right? If he's just like sitting in your kit and you're like, I'm gonna run him in, right? Because this floor, if you look at the map down here, has very weird range height on it. And it's almost divided in half by the way that the range height is kind of divided. Now, the enemies are weak to magic and slash. The enemy Ketone specifically has evasion plus 100, but is susceptible to Steel Heart, as you can see in the screenshot right here. The enemy Ketone does also start with AP plus 40, and the enemy Livial does have level 3 disable at a 35% chance to land. So make sure you're stacking your disable resistance on your units as well. Now, the bandits specifically are resistant to slash, but they are weak to magic. So keep in mind, they have a little bit of different resistances between the paladins and the thieves and the rangers. All of the enemies do have that defense penetration plus 50. If you are in player slot 4, or whatever unit you're putting in player slot 4, you must put disable resistance there, or you are going to be finding yourself in trouble. E7 and E8 thieves. So if the enemy steals heart on you, it is almost unavoidable, even with 50% charm resistance. So steal heart the enemy thieves first before they're able to steal heart you. I would still put in slot 1, 2, and 3 units with charm resistance. I would definitely put physical barrier break if you can in slots 4 or 5, because you are going to have enemy paladins. The enemy paladins are weak to magic, but they are going to be able to stun you, so keep that in mind. Ketone similarly has slow counter, which is probably going to proc on your units more than once. And Durando, I think most people think of Durando as like a melee assault unit. He actually has his gunner abilities on this map. So you do need to be careful, because Durando is going to be sniping you from long range. So don't be, thinking about Durando and thinking like, oh yeah, he's going to be pretty easy. I'm just going to run forward and, I got nothing to worry about. He will be sniping you and he will be dealing damage. Best strategy for this map, aggressively charm the enemy thieves to charm the other units. If you don't have a Steel Heart unit, you can kill the thieves because they are a little bit weaker than the other units. Just make sure you don't get charmed yourself in the process. Floor 48. This is a weird floor. I would say this is one of the floors that was surprisingly interesting to me. So basically, this is the floor that everybody hates, right? Where you start at the top of the staircase, and then you have a whole bunch of enemies clustered down in the center, and you have to make your way down the staircase and kind of fight the enemies, right? You're fighting Venera, Stern, Shadow Lynx, and they're going to be clustered with some enemy units and a White Mage. The White Mage has really interesting resistances and AoE resistance and defensive capabilities. So that White Mage is going to seem like, oh yeah, vulnerable target, we can take them out. It's a trap. They're trying to bait you to take that White Mage out, when really that White Mage is going to be exceptionally difficult to kill. Now, the enemies are vulnerable to slash, thankfully. The enemies do have accuracy 50, and the enemies do nullify haste, slow, stop, and quicken. The enemies have no quote-unquote added evasion, so like Venera and Shadow Lynx don't have added evasion. Tip from Ultima, Stern and Venera won't move right away, so you can kind of position on the stairs and take out some of the added enemies without triggering Venera and Shadow Lynx to move forward. You can't charm the heroes on the stage, but you can charm any of the non-heroes. I would definitely go for missile and slash resistance. And just as a warning, it is easy to be overwhelmed moving down the stairs or it's quite easy to get kind of ganked doing this, I would throw in Engelbert, as you can see that Mont did here. Definitely a good strategy. Other than that, take it slow, put in your tanky light element units, bring a healer, and go turtle style down the stairs, because the next thing you know, you're going to trigger a whole bunch of missile attacking units, and you're just going to start getting wailed on. Floor 49. This is an interesting floor too, because you're going to be fighting Ramuh, and then you're going to be fighting Frederica, Nivlu, Red Mages, Spellblades, and Paladins, and you're starting on the low ground. So unfortunately, we don't have the high ground. You're going to want to consider pretty much bringing Earth Element units exclusively to this map. All the enemies do have single target resistance plus 40. Earth Pierce attacks are the best form of attack, because Earth Pierce attacks are what the enemy is going to be weak to, and they're also considered area of effect attacks, so they're not considered single target attacks for the most part. Earth Fist is going to be the second best. The Spellblades do lack the single target resistance that a lot of the other units have. Ramuh does have that Spirit Penetration plus 70, so make sure you're not stacking Spirit, but you're stacking Magic Resistance. Some combination of Magic Resist, Lightning Resist, and Missile Resist is going to be important. If you're going on the side with Frederica, be careful of your distance from her, specifically in terms of range height. So if you are like moving up to Frederica and you step up onto her level, you can see here, right here, that there's kind of like this long alleyway, right, on both sides that are height level 4. So if you step up there and Frederica is able to hit you, she will be able to hit you with her disabling shot. So keep in mind, her disabling shot is only range height 0. So don't jump into a situation where you are basically vulnerable to her disabling your units. I would recommend going on the Nivlu side first, kill Nivlu and then kill Frederica. Some interesting ideas for units here. Baelo and Mont, while being Earth Elemental Slash, which is Slash is not the recommended type of attack here, they do have access to the ability Body Slam, which is a fist-based attack. So that is an ability that you can use with them that is going to be pretty powerful. Ketone also has her ninjutsu, which is really powerful. Luelle is going to be exceptionally powerful, although her fist drain attack, she only has access to like 3 casts or something like that, so you have to keep that in mind. Another unit that actually might be pretty good here is Murmur as well, since we are getting her EX. Of course, you can always throw in Ketone, or you can always throw in Zombie Ryu, or you know, any other Earth element that's going to buff the other Earth elements. Eileen, since she's Earth and Pierce, going to be God tier. There's just a whole bunch of units to consider here. If you can't bring an Earth elemental unit, bring a unit with Pierce attacks, because that will at least exploit the enemy's primary weakness, which is going to be piercing attacks or single target, AoE attacks. So piercing AoE attacks are going to be the best. Additional considerations. So Christmas Venera has magic resist up and lightning resistance up passives. Durando has missile resistance plus passives. And Kilfei has magic resistance plus and lightning resistance plus passives. So while Kilfei might not be the biggest damage dealer on the stage, you might be able to bring Kilfei in as a support capacity, where she will also be able to survive exceptionally well. Could be a really good idea here. Floor 50. This is an interesting final floor, and I actually think it's a little bit easier than the previous floors. You have a mixture of ice, water, and thunder enemies and one wind element enemy. The enemies are going to basically be 3 soldiers partnered with Gilgamesh, and then you have kind of this archer up in the upper left with Christmas Victoria, sorry. And then you have like 3 black mages, which are not the biggest of threats. You're going to want to bring magic resistance, since Shiva is primarily magic resistance, and you're going to want to bring a lot of AoE resistance. The problem with bringing fire and slash type, since the enemies are weak to this, is that you are going to have a couple water type enemies, specifically Christmas Victoria, which will snipe and take your fire units out. And the other thing you have to consider is that Gilgamesh, if you look down here, I put Gilgamesh's starting position really close to you. Gilgamesh is going to be able to come in here and just fucking murder your team immediately with AoE attacks, followed up with those soldiers coming in as well. And then you also have one wind element soldier even closer, which will come in and start dealing damage. So you might want to consider a 2-party clear for this stage, where the first party is just going to focus on Gilgamesh and the soldiers, because I could literally imagine people setting up to come in here and then Gilgamesh coming in and just like fucking annihilating your party because you didn't stack slash resistance, because you're like, oh, Dig said bring magic resistance. And then Gilgamesh comes in here and then just like kills all of you guys. So you might want to consider like a slash ice resist party first to deal with Gilgamesh and the other soldiers. They will use paralyzing edge, so you do have to be careful with that. Other than that, the enemy ranged are going to be weak to fire, slash, and pierce. The black mages are going to be weak to fist. Gilgamesh is also going to use slow. So if you really don't kill Gilgamesh right away, he is going to not only AoE damage your party, but also slow them as well. I cannot emphasize how important it is to kill Gilgamesh first. Shiva is predominantly going to be magic and AoE attacks. Avoid defense up because the enemies have penetration, but bring some slash resistance for that Gilgamesh. One thing you might consider is bringing like a tank and putting them in position 5. And then having that tank, if they have high enough agility, maybe moving forward and kind of blocking Gilgamesh from like Katetsuing your entire party. Other than that, you do just want to be aware because Christmas Victoria can one-shot your fire units if you're killing Shiva. So it is recommended in various strategies to kind of bring 9S or another lightning element unit that can kind of skirt around and attack Christmas Victoria while you're kind of dealing with the threat that is Shiva. Overall, though, I would say this seems like a little bit of an easier floor. I still think the Siren floor is a lot worse than this floor, since Siren had access to a large amount of AoE sleep, which was really obnoxious. I actually find the Diablo's floor was pretty easy, and this floor looks pretty easy in comparison. Finally, let's talk about 50EX. And of course, what you're going to see on the screen here is a couple different formations from Stonemont and Hamigemu. Again, of course, I would recommend going and watching their clear videos if you're going to get to it before I upload my clear video. You can see they kind of utilized multi-element combinations. Basically, you're going to have 3 phases in this fight. And you have 3 different bosses. So the first boss is going to be Garvel, the second boss is going to be Two-Headed Dragon, and the third boss is going to be Bahamut. Now, each boss spawns with adds, and not all of the adds spawn right away. So Garvel down here is going to spawn with E6, 7, 4, 5, 10, and 11. Or sorry, with I believe it's E5, E4. Hold on. So I believe Garvel's going to have E4, E5, E7, E6. So it's going to be Garvel and these 4 units right here. Make sure you kill the adds before you kill Garvel, because as soon as you kill Garvel, Two-Headed Dragon is going to spawn. And when Two-Headed Dragon spawns, he spawns 2 gunners up here. Take out the gunners, fight Two-Headed Dragon. When Two-Headed Dragon dies, Bahamut spawns, and then 2 gunners spawn up here. So killing the boss is going to trigger the adds to spawn, which is really important to know. You may want to pre-position your units before you deliver the finishing blow to Garvel or Two-Headed Dragon. The adds are, once you're past Garvel, going to all be gunners exclusively. Two-Headed Dragon is susceptible to stun and paralysis, so keep that in mind. Blind is going to be huge on this map. So you are going to want to bring blind resistance in some capacity or Esuna in some capacity. Silence is also all over the place. So if you don't have a Salmasa on a mage unit, make sure you grab a fairy ring so that they have silence resistance. Two-Headed Dragon is going to be the dominant silencer and blinder with his AoE attack, which has pretty high range. So just keep aware of that. Bahamut is also going to have a 30% chance to paralyze and immobilize, so you want to keep that in mind too. You're also going to want to bring some type of dispel for Bahamut. because he's going to have a really powerful buff. The same buff if you fought him in the 3-star battle, which is pretty annoying. You're going to want to bring a lot of AoE resistance for this, and you're going to want to bring healers, magic resistance, and bring a solid slash comp. The enemy is weak to slash. We all know how to do slash at this point. You're going to want to chain and finish. Bahamut has like 44,000 HP, so expect to either have to lower resistances, lower attack and magic, and chain attacks in order to potentially finish. All right, everybody, we made it to the end of the video. Of course, I'll be doing content for this over the course of the next week. Other than that, make sure you guys check out the PDF. Make sure you guys either download that or go to the Imgur if you're not comfortable with the download. Make sure that you also check out Stonemont's page and Hamigemu's page. They were gracious enough to let me use some images from their clear videos in here. And yeah, overall, hope you guys have good luck and good fun on tower, and enjoy the rest of your day.